What's up, everybody, and welcome to week 5 of the Prophet series. That's crazy. This series is just absolutely flying by. But today we're talking about, surprise, surprise, the prophet Jeremiah. And we're going to be talking about how justice and covenant faithfulness is still relevant in the church today, and how Jeremiah's message actually can still be applied to and is still relevant within the church today. So, I'm going to begin. Throughout the book of Jeremiah, he confronts injustices, oppressions, and inequalities within Israelite society and in the people's worship of God. While it is easy to believe that these issues were only relevant during Jeremiah's time, in reality, if Jeremiah were around in America today, he would challenge the church to defend those facing injustices and ensure that its own actions do not contribute to oppression or inequality. In fact, the message Jeremiah prophetically speaks can be used in the church today to engage the inequalities and inequalities of American society. However, in order to understand why Jeremiah's message remains relevant, we must first understand what injustices Jeremiah actually confronted. In Jeremiah 5, he exposed the nation for corrupt behavior against God, as well as leaders who have abused their power by oppressing the people and not leading the nation in a righteous way. Additionally, Jeremiah calls out prophets who have been sharing messages that simply please the people and don't actually prophetically speak on behalf of God. Even in Jeremiah 7:5-7, when the people performed religious rituals in the temple of God, God declared their worship meaningless because their actions contradicted their conduct outside the temple. God warns the Israelites, "Do not oppress the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow. Do not shed innocent blood," revealing that true worship is not just about outward expression, but also requires changes in your actions and justice to others. This concept of protecting the marginalized continues in Jeremiah 22:3, when God commands his people to do what is right, to do what is just and right. Additionally, Jeremiah reminds the Israelites that success is found in righteousness and obedience to God, not in wealth or power. Similarly, Jeremiah 35:8-9 shows the Israelites' lack of obedience to uphold God's covenant commands when they did not hold their promise to free their slaves and treated the slaves unjustly. Clements explains how Judah's repeated disobedience to God's commands and continual covenant breaking revealed a pattern in which their lack of faithfulness to God resulted in the oppression of others. Although today in America, the church does not face the same situations that Israel did, if Jeremiah were around today, he would still confront the church wherever injustice, oppression, and inequality existed. While we would not hear the exact same message given to the Israelites, the same idea behind them would be conveyed. First, he would discuss the church's need to confront injustices within society. According to Pew Research Center, 40% of Americans believe that Muslims, Jews, and Black people all face a great deal of discrimination. Therefore, Jeremiah would likely call the church to acknowledge these injustices and defend the oppressed as an expression of worship. He would also likely encourage the church to keep participating in outreach ministries, serving the homeless and refugees, to serve the marginalized as God desires. Additionally, he would challenge believers to examine whether their own actions contribute to injustice or inequality rather than reflect God's justice. As Jeremiah warned the Israelites in chapter 7 against meaningless outward expression, as Jeremiah warned the Israelites in chapter 7 against meaningless outward worship that does not reflect obedience and justice, he would also warn the church today that genuine worship is exemplified through how believers treat others. Overall, if Jeremiah came to America today, he would likely challenge the church not only to treat the oppressed with justice, but also to ensure we aren't contributing to the inequalities within our own community and church. Jeremiah's prophetic voice can help the church engage with the inequalities and inequalities of American society by reminding Christians that justice is central to covenant faithfulness. According to the Ambassador Bible Fellowship, believers today are part of the new covenant community discussed in Jeremiah. Therefore, since the church is part of this new covenant, the same messages that God states about rescuing the oppressed and treating others rightly applies to us today. Walter Brueggemann likewise explains this covenant and how the contemporary church continues to struggle with our own sins over upholding our dialogical covenant just as ancient Israel had. However, Jeremiah's message reminds believers of the importance of repentance, faithfulness, faithful obedience, and pursuing justice to reflect genuine worship of God. Ultimately, Jeremiah's teachings not only show the Israelites, but also shows us today that true justice for the marginalized is a result of genuine worship. As a church, we are called to remain faithful to our covenant relationship with God and to engage with the inequalities of American society. So that's it for today. I hope you guys all enjoyed and that maybe you could have got something out of this message. And I encourage you all to read the book of Jeremiah because it's full of a lot of wisdom and knowledge, and I've learned a lot from it, especially this week. So stay tuned for next week's prophet series. Bye, guys.